And hello everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. It has been a while, and hello, I am back. So, before we start off the show, I want to mention where I've been. If you follow the Twitter page, because apparently I forgot to put it on the Facebook page, but if you follow the Twitter account for the podcast, which is at Movie Pit Podcast, by the way, it's down below in the description/show notes area. But I forgot to put this on the Facebook page, which is facebook.com/moviepit. But I had to go deal with some personal family matters that I needed to attend to. So that's why I haven't been on the podcast. That's why there hasn't been a podcast for the last 2 weeks. So I wanted to apologize for not letting you guys know ahead of time. It was something that kind of just came out of the blue. Everything's fine. For what it can be. Don't want to get too into it because I just don't want to. But I'm fine. It's extended family from far away. So, but yeah, I have returned. I am back. The podcast is back. So if the podcast is a little rusty this week, I apologize. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things. But yeah, so that's where I was and where the podcast stood for these last couple weeks. This is the Movie Pit. Forgot to introduce myself. Hello, this is the Movie Pit. My name is Christian. This is where we talk about all the big noteworthy news items that came out throughout the week. We also talk about the movie trailers that came out this week, and we'll of course talk about the movies that are out in theaters this weekend for your viewing pleasures. Now, I am recording this a little earlier than I usually do because, of course, the podcast goes up on Friday. I usually record a little bit on Friday as well, just in case anything big drops on Friday morning, early afternoon. However, I will be busy on Friday, so I am recording this a little earlier. I'm recording this on Thursday, a lot earlier than I usually do, so I apologize if I miss anything big that comes out. Obviously, that's what the Facebook page is for, and that is now what the Twitter page is for as well. I'm getting a little more active on Twitter. This week was a little, again, I'm just getting back into the swing of things, so I apologize if I'm a little rusty and everything seems kind of half-assed at the moment. But yeah, gonna get back into the swing of things for sure next week for you guys. So obviously, 2 weeks worth of movie news items is a lot to cover. So I'm going to cover some of the news items that I missed last week that I would have loved to talk about in a kind of quick fire post, I guess, not post, but a quick fire way of getting these news items out. So yeah, let's start off. We're going to start off with some rumors. So first two rumors we're going to talk about, or only two rumors, the only two rumors that are available. The first rumor is Matt Damon apparently passed on a villain role in the Spider-Man Homecoming sequel. So according to Meet the Press, Sony Pictures approached Damon about playing an unspecified villain in the sequel. However, Damon passed on the role, but again, there was no details on who the villain could be. Now, this would have been Damon's kind of real first comic book slash superhero genre movie. Of course, with the exception of a cameo role he did in a certain comic book movie. I'm not going to spoil that in case you don't know what I'm talking about. But that's superhero comic book genre is the only genre that Damon really hasn't touched yet, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, there no word on who the villain was, and there's really no. I mean, even if you get like, oh, Matt Damon was up for it, you really don't kind of know what villain that is. So there is that. So the only thing we do know is that Spider-Man Homecoming, the sequel, does currently have a release date of July 5th, 2019, next year. So we'll probably know a little bit more once they start shooting that movie. And the second rumor that we're going to talk about is Ron Howard apparently shot the same script that Phil Lord and Chris Miller were shooting off of for Solo: A Star Wars Story. Now, this story comes from Vulture, who had an unnamed actor involved in production who gave them this information. Now, according to the source, the production of Solo under Lord and Miller was chaotic, and the duo would typically shoot more than 30 takes, given whatever scene it was. but the most intriguing revelation from the source is this quote, saying, quote, "It's exactly the same script. They're filming exactly the same things. There's nothing new. Lord and Miller used whole sets, but Ron is using parts of those sets. I guess they're not shooting wide angles, maybe to save money," end quote. Now, if you remember when it was reported, Lord and Miller butted heads with the screenwriter of the movie, which was Lawrence Kasdan, who has written a lot of the original movies. He was unhappy with how Lord and Miller were shooting, and Lord and Miller are very well known for encouraging improv while filming, which everyone was dumbfounded by, since I don't know why, since that's what they were known for, and it took a long time for them to finally say, well, we've kind of had enough of this. But that was the case. So does this really mean anything? We don't know. Obviously, the reports at the time when Ron Howard came in were saying that he had to go back. He was going to first finish filming what was left of Solo, which was like 3 weeks, according to the original reports. And then he was going to go back and reshoot some of the things that they had done. And apparently he went back, if depending on the other rumor you want to believe, he went back and refilmed the whole movie. He definitely had to reshoot some things. Paul Bettany was brought in to replace an actor who, for whatever reason, I can't think of right now at the moment, but he was brought in to replace certain actors. So we don't know exactly what's going to go on. We don't know how Solo is going to turn out, but obviously the whole behind-the-scenes drama is definitely going to be in the back of our heads for a long time. Also, on top of this, before this rumor dropped, it was announced that Ron Howard would be getting Solo directing credit. We don't know if Phil Lord and Chris Miller will get any credit for the movie, but Ron Howard is getting the directing credit for the movie, so there is that. Alright, let's move on to the other news items. This one was a very brief one, and one that everyone kind of went crazy for, apparently, but it was something that I think everyone knew was going to happen. I don't know why people are going crazy. Chris Evans teased that he was leaving the Marvel Cinematic Universe after Avengers 4 in a New York Times interview he had. We all knew the contract status of Chris Evans. It's been teased for a while that that his contract was up after Avengers 4. There's a lot of people suggesting that Captain America is going to die in Avengers Infinity War, or he's probably going to die in Avengers 4. Either way, his contract was up after all this, and of course there's people maybe hoping that they would, re-sign him in some sort of shape or fashion. But with Avengers Infinity War coming out and that shot at the trailer of him fighting off Thanos, maybe people are suggesting that maybe he's going to die right there. Who knows? But Chris Evans was always bound to leave the Marvel Cinematic Universe after this. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen with that. It's going to be kind of a shame to see Chris Evans go. Obviously, he's been an amazing part of the cinematic universe, and he's been an amazing Captain America. And I can guarantee you that there will not be a single dry eye in the theater if he does end up biting the dust in Avengers Infinity War, which of course comes out at the end of the month. Alright, so let's move on. I'm trying to get past all these movie news items that came out for the last 2 weeks. Colin Trevorrow will return to direct Jurassic World 3 after directing the first movie. He stepped down from the director's chair and took over the co-writing for the sequel. He did also co-write the first film, but he left the director's chair for J.A. Bonilla, who is going to direct Jurassic World 2 Fallen Kingdom, or Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. They're not calling it Jurassic World 2, but Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. He took over that. EW, Entertainment Weekly, did the reporting that Trevorrow will come back to direct the third film. He will also come back to co-write the movie as well. Of course, we know that Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom comes out later this year. I believe it's in June 22nd, if I remember off the top of my head. But Jurassic World 3 will open on July 11th, 2021. We have a long ways to go for that one, but they're already working on it, so there's that. Wonder Woman 2 has added Pedro Pascal. Of course, Pascal, known from Game of Thrones and Netflix's Narcos. He was also in Kingsman: The Golden Circle. His role in Wonder Woman 2 is being kept under wraps, but he now joins Kristen Wiig, who is playing the villain of Cheetah in the sequel, and of course, Gal Gadot will come back to reprise her role as Diana Prince / Wonder Woman. However, details on the plot are currently unknown. It's been reported that the movie will be set during the 80s, during the Cold War, but that isn't confirmed just yet. But that is the running story plot details that we know at the moment. Pascal also recently just worked with screenwriter and director Patty Jenkins, who is of course also coming back to direct Wonder Woman 2 on a TV movie called Exposed. So they have a very good working relationship already. Wonder Woman 2 will open next year in November, so we'll probably be hearing a little bit more on Wonder Woman once they start filming. I believe they start filming late summer, early fall. I could be wrong about that, but with the release date in November, I assume that's probably right. There is that. Tessa Thompson has joined the Men in Black spin-off with her Thor Ragnarok co-star Chris Hemsworth. The movie will be directed by F. Gary Gray, who of course directed The Fate of the Furious and Straight Outta Compton. The movie will reportedly, now with these new reports, take place mostly in London. It will be a soft reboot, but the action of the movie will take place within the same timeline as the previous films, much like what Jurassic World is doing, and it takes place in the same timeline as Jurassic Park. It was previously reported that the movie would center on a white man, a black woman, and an older man, and now with Thompson joining the movie, the Hollywood Reporter reports that the spin-off will be, quote, more of an ensemble piece than a two-hander and will be more global in scope. We don't know what that means, but there is that. Tessa Thompson, of course, blowing up since starring in Creed, and obviously she's kind of I think studios are kind of more aiming her for some action movies now that she's done Thor Ragnarok, and that seems to be the case here with Men in Black. And her and Hemsworth had some pretty good chemistry in Thor Ragnarok, so seeing them team up again here for Men in Black in another sci-fi kind of fantasy adventure would be kind of cool. Obviously, different roles for them, but would be cool nonetheless. So let's move on to the two kind of real big news items that came out, technically three, but two for the moment, since one of them is connected to the other, that I would have loved to talk about when they were freshly new news items. But Captain Marvel is bringing back some familiar faces. Now, Marvel Studios' Captain Marvel started production already. They're currently filming. And they announced, in that announcement that they started production, that they were bringing back some familiar faces the fans of Marvel's Cinematic Universe will know. They also released a new synopsis that reads like this. Quote, the story follows Carol Danvers as she becomes one of the universe's most powerful heroes when Earth is caught in the middle of a galactic war between two alien races. Set in the 1990s, Captain Marvel is an all-new adventure from a previously unseen period in the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Unquote. Brie Larson will of course, I can't speak now, will of course play Carol Danvers / Captain Marvel. It was announced also at Comic-Con last year that Samuel L. Jackson will reprise his role as Nick Fury. That is now confirmed with this recent press release. And now we know the other MCU names that will be attached. Guardians of the Galaxy cast members Jamu Hansu and Lee Pace will reprise their roles as Korath and Ronan, respectively. But of course, the big name coming back, if you know about this news item already, is Clark Gregg. He is returning to the big screen Marvel Cinematic Universe as Agent Phil Coulson, which is really, really cool. Again, the movie is set during the 90s, which is why these characters are all around, since they're all dead, with the exception of Phil Coulson, because he's on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But the movie will also touch on the Kree Skull War. Those are the two alien races. Obviously, we've seen the Kree already. Ronan is actually a Kree alien. and the Skrulls have not been introduced in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they will be introduced here in this movie, which is pretty cool. Ben Mendelsohn, who can currently be seen in Ready Player One, playing the villain, he is now confirmed for the cast as well. He was in talks for a while. He will probably be playing a Skrull leader if the little rumors on that were true. The rest of the cast members are pretty they're not unknown. They're very known people, but one of the bigger names also in the cast is Jude Law, and he will reportedly be playing Mar-Vell, very important character in the whole Captain Marvel origin and history, so it should be kind of interesting to see how they play that out as well. Captain Marvel, like I mentioned, is currently filming, and it has a release date of March 8th of next year. Oh, I hope it's good. I really do. But with a cast like this, it's kind of cool. So, and again, seeing Phil Coulson back on the big screen, Marvel Cinematic Universe, pretty damn cool. All right, so let's get to the final news item of the 2-week roundup of when I was gone. The X-Men franchise. It's a lot of people. It's taking a bit of a snag. Especially with this news item. So the X-Men films, the New Mutants and X-Men Dark Phoenix have been delayed. That's right, both of them have been delayed.
Oh, come on!
This is Dark Phoenix's first delayed, but this is the New Mutants' second delay. So the news broke that the X-Men films have been delayed, like I mentioned. The New Mutants has been delayed before, like I mentioned. It was supposed to come out this year. It was actually supposed to come out next week, but they delayed then. They pushed it to next year in February. Well, it has now been pushed back yet again to August of next year. As for X-Men Dark Phoenix, that was supposed to come out in November. That has been delayed now to February of next year. So, like I mentioned, originally the New Mutants was delayed because 20th Century Fox wanted to make the film scarier, since they went the full horror route with the spinoff. So they would come back and film some new footage. Rumors at the point even said that they were going to add another character, but now it's being reported that the reshoots the studio are demanding are pretty high. Collider was the one that broke this movie news item, saying that at least 50% of the movie may be reshot, and they're adding 1 or 2 new characters who will be present throughout the entirety of the movie. Also, director Josh Boone has been having some creative differences with the studio over the requested changes to the movie, but we'll get more into the New Mutants in a little bit because there was an update to that news item a couple days after that news item dropped. So we'll go back to that in a minute. As for X-Men Dark Phoenix, apparently they did a test screening for the movie, as of course a studio does, and they found out it needed some more additional photography, which is pretty normal nowadays, so don't freak out. However, given the X-Men movies are such an ensemble cast, and they're all very in-demand actors, it was going to be hard to get them all together again relatively soon. So the availability of all the actors is so scattered, and everyone wouldn't be able to come back until August or September, leaving Simon Kinberg, who was a longtime producer of the X-Men movies since X-Men The Last Stand, I think it was that one or X2. I forget which one it was, but one of those 2 movies he came in. He's making his directorial debut on X-Men Dark Phoenix. That would have left them only 2 months to complete whatever they were going to film. So Fox decided to delay the movie, which is tough for fans, I know, but a necessity and necessary to get a good or decent and hopefully a great film in X-Men Dark Phoenix. So there is that. Which I'm okay with the delay. Again, if it means that they're gonna make the movie better, if it means it's not gonna be rushed. Obviously, we know what a rushed job looks like for the Phoenix storyline because we got X-Men Last Stand, and that wasn't very good. So yeah, there's that. I don't mind the delay. I am bummed out by the delay, but I'm okay with the delay if it means, again, getting a better film. So let's move on to the update with the New Mutants, with the reshoots. And now this particular part comes from the tracking board, and it sheds more light on the reshoots. Now, according to them, again, this is the tracking board, not Collider, they reiterate that the original pitch for the New Mutants was a straight-up horror movie. And when they came down to making the movie, Fox was reluctant, and they had writers come in to tone down the script. because Fox wanted a PG-13 movie that was a cross between John Hughes and Stephen King. Writer-director Josh Boone took it in stride and went along with it, because obviously, that's what a good director does with a studio, especially if they allow him to play within the playpen of one of their biggest franchises. But the success of it and the reception that the trailer had when it first came out, Fox decided to change their minds. So the 50% reshoots are to bring the movie back to its original concept, which is what Boone pitched in the first place. However, according to the tracking board, Boone had shot also an end credit scene that introduced Mr. Sinister, who was going to be played by John Hamm, of all people. But that has since been cut, and Antonio Banderas has now joined the movie to play an unspecified villain for the movie who is not Mr. Sinister. So they completely got rid of Mr. Sinister entirely and are now changing the villain for whatever reason. Unless that's just a ploy that Fox decided to go out. Finally, the character of Warlock, who's a mutant who can assume any shape, who has also been a part of the New Mutants team in the comics, was in the very early scripts, but is not going to be in the movie because Fox thought the character was too expensive. But going back to shooting 50% of the movie apparently is just fine. But whatever. So we've talked about New Mutants here on the podcast, and I'm really looking forward to it. I know very little of the New Mutants from the comics. I've read some of the stuff, but I haven't read a lot of it. But I was excited for them to do a full-blown horror. I know the concept of a horror movie. I know the concept of a horror movie for the New Mutants is out there. I know a lot of people weren't down with the idea of them doing a full-blown horror movie. For the New Mutants was a bit of a dividing factor for a lot of fans. I'm looking forward to it. I don't mind that. I actually was really, really digging the idea of it, and the fact that they went back and they reshot some stuff already to bring that back a little bit and make it a full-blown horror movie. Now they're gonna go back and reshoot a lot of other stuff to make it a full-blown horror movie. I'm all for it. I'm gonna eat that up as much as I can. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I am bummed out that I had to wait longer now for the New Mutants, but I'm okay with that as long as it's good, obviously. So yeah. All right, so that's all the movie. That's all the noteworthy news items that I could wrangle up in the time that I've come back to talk about since the podcast came out 2 weeks ago. But yeah, there you go. You're all caught up now. So let's move on to this week's movie news items, which, believe it or not, has been a very late week, at least at the time of this recording. So let's talk about some trailers, shall we?
Coming soon to theaters.
Alright, so the first trailer that came out this week was Night School. That is from Universal Pictures, and it is directed by Michael D. Lee, who directed Girls Trip, which was one of the surprises of last year. The movie stars Kevin Hart as a man who has to go back to school to get his GED in order to become a financial analyst. And Tiffany Haddish from Girls Trip will play the teacher in the movie. Honestly, I don't know how I felt about watching the trailer. Some parts I was really laughing right along with it, and other jokes kind of fell flat. But it's sometimes, and to be fair, for me especially, it is kind of hard to gauge a comedy movie from a trailer because you don't know if they're giving away all the good jokes, and sometimes the jokes in the trailers don't have the big setup that the movie will have for that joke, so you're just kind of catching obviously the punchline in a lot of cases. But I don't know, we'll see. I know a lot of people out there don't really like Kevin Hart. I was one of those people for a long time, but Kevin Hart kind of grew on me a little bit. Tiffany Haddish, obviously one of the standouts, the breakouts of Girls Trip, and she just seems like a lot of fun in interviews and stuff like that. At the Oscars, she had her whole big thing with Maya Rudolph, which was great. But having all of them team up with Malcolm D. Lee is gonna be pretty cool. So maybe I'm just cutting the movie a little bit short. No, I'm not trying to make all the height jokes with Kevin Hart in the movie. I know that's first of all, it's too easy, but that's not what I'm trying to do. But there you go, Night School. And then there's this great bit throughout the trailer. I don't know if they're going to continue it throughout the whole movie. Taron Killam is in the movie. It looks like he plays the principal of the school, and he has this whole thing with them as he's trying to talk black, and he's just it's kind of funny in the trailer. So it's hopefully they extend on that in the whole movie. So that's my hope. Night School opens later this year on September 28th, so you can look forward to that. But the big trailer for me this week was the trailer for the crazy looking action thriller Upgrade. This comes from Blumhouse Tilt, which is one of the production arms of the hit studio Blumhouse Productions, and the Blumhouse Tilt usually focus on the other genre side of things. But they released a trailer for Upgrade. It's written and directed by Leigh Whannell, who is the writer for the horror franchise Insidious. He also wrote the first Saw. So he is a big name in the horror community. Everyone knows who he is. He was also in the Insidious movies. He plays Specs, the shorter guy, not the taller guy that helps Lin Shaye's character in the movie. In the movies, I should say. This movie premiered at the South X by Southwest Film Festival, or festival. It's not just a film festival. There's a bunch of other stuff going on at that time, and it got some pretty decent reviews. And I can see why, because the trailer for the movie, I saw the red band trailer first. And a little bit later, they released the green band trailer, and I saw that afterwards, and I was like, no, the red band trailer is so much better. But Upgrade centers on Gray Trace, who was played in the movie by Logan Marshall Green. I think maybe most fans will know him from Prometheus. He plays the husband character of Noomi Rapace's character. So he's a technophobe in a utopian near future when computers control nearly everything from cars to crime surveillance, who is paralyzed in a freak mugging, but when a billionaire technologist offers him an experimental paralyzing cure, an implant computer chip called STEM, Gray finds out that the chip has a voice and a mind of its own. The synopsis is pretty much gives you the gist of what the trailer is. We do see the mugging in the movie, and we do see him getting the chip and him being able to walk, and he just turns into this badass all of a sudden. It's a trailer that you should really find the time to watch. And whatever version you watch, you pretty much get the same kind of idea. But the red band trailer, obviously being a red band trailer, show a lot more violence and they show a lot more of the blood and everything. It gives you a real full scope on what the movie is going to be. And I can honestly say I was kind of looking forward to this because I knew Whannell was behind it, but I am fully on board with this movie. I really am. I cannot wait for this movie. This movie just jumped immediately to my one of the most anticipated movies of the summer for me. It's definitely on my must-watch list for the year. That trailer just is full-blown crazy, and if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you do. So that's Upgrade, and it opens on June 1st. We will definitely talk more about this when we get closer to the release date. So there you go. Those are the two trailers I'm going to talk about. There was two other trailers that dropped this week. One of them was the first trailer for Terry Gilliam's long in development and long in the works movie, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. That came out. It's a foreign trailer. I forgot what country it was from, but it's finally a trailer for the movie. It doesn't look too bad. I don't have much to say about it, which is why I'm not talking about it, but the fact that it's finally getting a trailer, the fact that it's finally coming out, hopefully, because there is no release date for the movie just yet, but the fact that we got a trailer is really, really cool, and that's finally coming out for Terry Gilliam, because this has been a project he's been working on for years, is great. Also, we got a trailer for Johnny English Strikes Again. Yes, the Rowan Atkinson kind of James Bond spoof movies, Johnny English. They're making a third one. It does come out later this year. There's some conflicting release dates because they think it's coming out during the summer, but then I saw somewhere else that it may be coming out in October. We don't really know when the movie's coming out. It is coming out this year. I'm just gonna go on the limb and say it's probably coming out during the summer. But we'll definitely keep an eye on that one for you guys. It's Johnny English. It's Johnny English in his full glory, and if you miss those kind of movies, then you're gonna be glad to probably see the trailer. So those are the other two trailers. Obviously, if another trailer drops, I will put it down below in the description/show notes area. So yeah. That's it for trailer talk. Let's go on and talk about the movie news items that came out this week. Alright, so the first movie news item we're going to talk about this week is that Universal has hired a writer for the adaptation of Armada from the Ready Player One author. Obviously, Ready Player One is currently living it up at the box office. If you haven't watched it yet, I do highly recommend it. It's very good. I've watched the movie and read the book, and they're very different from each other, but both very good in their own right and way. But now, Universal wants in on Warner Brothers' action, as they have hired writer Dan Mizuyu. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I didn't look it up before I started recording, I'm sorry. But he is set to write a new draft of the script for Armada. By the way, he's written films like Wrath of the Titans and Van Helsing. Probably not the two best movies to put out there, but they're okay. But like I mentioned, he's writing a new draft of the script for Armada, which is based off Ernest Cline's other hit novel of 2015 of the same name. Now, Armada centers on a teenage player of an online video game in which players defend against an alien invasion. He discovers that the game is actually a simulator to prepare him and others to defend against an actual alien invasion. You know, the typical, usual stuff. Ernest Cline wrote the first draft of the scripts, something very similar he did for Ready Player One, and will stick around to help David Mizuyu, I think, again, that's how you say his last name, I could be wrong, with his draft, and he will also be a producer on the film, again, much like he did for Ready Player One. I personally haven't read the book, but fans do seem to say that maybe Ready Player One is a better book than Armada. A lot of people thought that maybe Armada would be better for a cinematic movie, which is probably the case here. But yeah, the love for Armada opposed to Ready Player One, the book-wise is not the same, but there you go. I think Ernest Cline may be the new hit guy for turning his books into movies. So we'll see how that works out. Dwayne The Rock Johnson, The Rock, whatever you want to call him, one of the most busiest men in Hollywood. He may not be returning for Fast and the Furious 9. Son of a bitch. Now, in an in-depth interview with the Rolling Stones, Johnson somewhat suggested he may not return for the 9th installment of the Fast and the Furious franchise. This, of course, stems from the on-set drama between him and franchise star Vin Diesel on the set of The Fate of the Furious. And it all came to light with an Instagram post with Johnson calling his male co-stars candy asses, as The Rock does. And eventually reports came out that he was referring to Diesel. And then, of course, more reports came out saying that Johnson and Diesel shot their scenes separately. Something that Johnson confirms within the interview of the Rolling Stones, or with the Rolling Stone. And the drama wasn't fixed until later than expected. And this is probably what led to Johnson and Jason Statham's characters, Shaw, getting more screen time together, and the now in the works team-up/spinoff between the two characters of Hobbs and Shaw. So what happened? Well, at least according to Johnson, he said this, saying, quote, Vin and I have had few discussions, including an important face-to-face in my trailer, and what I came to realize is that we have a fundamental difference in philosophies on how we approach movie making and collaborating. It took me some time, but I'm grateful for the clarity whether we work together or not, or whether we work together again or not, end quote. So how does this affect Johnson's appearance in Fast and the Furious 9? Well, they asked him, and he said this, saying, quote, I'm not quite sure. Right now I'm concentrating on making the spin-off as good as it can be, but I wish him all the best, and I harbor no ill will there just because of the clarity we have. And in Johnson's good charismatic ways that he has, he continued saying, actually, you can erase that last part of no ill will. We'll just keep it with the clarity. End quote. Now, if you remember, Johnson joined the franchise in Fast 5, where his character Hobbs was introduced, and since then, he's become a staple, pretty much. For argument's sake, he's become a staple in the franchise as Hobbs. Since joining the franchise. But since joining the franchise, Johnson has become a very, very busy man. Of course, he has 2 movies coming out this year. He's got Rampage coming out, is it next week or the week after, something like that? It's coming out this month, and then he has Skyscraper coming out in the summer. Even his involvement in Furious 7 was cut down due to scheduling, so there was that. But his involvement in the franchise was always going to be a toss-up in the future either way. That being said, it's not like Johnson really needs the franchise, because he's got, other movies all lined up, but having him not return would be kind of a slight blow for the franchise, because maybe there's people out there who only go watch the Fast and Furious movies because of The Rock, and maybe it'll be a little weird not to see him in the movie at all. If he doesn't come back, the spinoff with Shaw would be probably a good way to write him out for the remaining 2 movies, because there are already 2 movies already announced. Or maybe they just write him off the franchise, saying, "No, he can't be with us anymore." I doubt they would kill him off screen, because that would be really dumb. Unless they can get him back for like a day to film a death scene in his case, I don't know. But regardless of it all, having the drama between Johnson and Diesel obviously is big enough for this to become a conversation of whether or not Johnson's going to come back or not. I would be a little bummed out if I didn't see Hobbs in the Fast and Furious franchise anymore. But we'll see how that turns out. Obviously, this would be pretty big. But if you saw Fate of the Furious, you know that it kind of ended off in a weird note. We don't really know where they're going to take the franchise from there. So it should be kind of interesting to see how all this turns out. Again, maybe Johnson and Vin Diesel can put their beef aside, or their whatever you want to call it aside, for a little bit, and just have these movies have these movies work out and have a good working relationship from there on out. But we'll see what happens. I guess we'll see what happens. All right, so let's move on to the next movie news item. Red Sonja is getting another reboot try, and it has a writer. A remake of Red Sonja has been in the works for a long time in Hollywood now, but it's, again, looking a little closer as they just hired a writer. Millennium Films, who has the rights to Red Sonja, has hired Ashley Edward Miller to write the screenplay. For those unfamiliar or need a refresher, Red Sonja was introduced in the 70s in the Conan the Barbarian comics, and her origin story was that her family got killed by mercenaries. But as she tried to defend herself, she couldn't pick up her brother's sword and was beat and raped by those mercenaries. Left for dead, she is visited by a goddess who gives her powers of amazing strength and fighting skills so she can carry out her vengeance. Since then, her origin has become kind of slightly toned down a little bit, but nevertheless, she is one of the most badass female characters you can read. The original movie starred Bridget Nielsen, which is pretty awesome, and it even had Arnold Schwarzenegger in the film, not playing Conan the Barbarian, but play another character. For some reason, it might have been some rights issues or something, I can't recall, but he was in the movie not playing Conan, though. The reboot was going to happen in 2010, and believe it or not, it actually had a Rose McGowan set to play the character. There was posters released, or at least a concept poster released with her, and it was going to be directed by Robert Rodriguez, but for whatever reason never got off the ground. I think I read somewhere that McGowan got hurt training, and they just canceled the movie as a whole, which is ironic because McGowan would later be one of the villains in the Conan the Barbarian remake in 2011 with Jason Momoa, which was not very good at all. I don't recommend you watch that because it's not very good. But yeah, so there was that. Simon West will later try to bring the movie to life, and he eyed Amber Heard and Megan Fox for the role, but again, nothing ever happened from that project, and since then it became stuck in developmental hell until last year, where it was announced that Bryan Singer was in talks to do a rated R TV series, but again, nothing has happened since then either, so I don't know what they're gonna do. As for Ashley Edward Miller, his resume is kind of all over the place. Yes, it is a he. The first feature film he wrote was Agent Cody Banks, if you want to take that there. But he has since broken to more genre fare movies. He was one of the writers for the first Thor movie. He was a co-writer on X-Men First Class. He's also written for TV series like Andromeda, Fringe, and Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles. He's also now a consulting producer on the second season of the Amazon series Lore, and he's currently co-authoring a mystery young adult novel called Colin Fisher. So he's all over the place at the moment. There's no director at the moment, or there's no directors being eyed or in talks or anything like that, but with the writer working on the script at the moment, and presumably Millennium Films is maybe going to want to jump on the female-led action movie trend. Obviously that was jump-started by Wonder Woman once again. We can probably be hearing a little bit more of Red Sonja on the big screen sooner rather than later, but obviously we'll have to wait and see on that. So let the fan casting once again begin for Red Sonja for that. So yeah, that should be kind of interesting to see. I don't remember too much about I've seen the original Red Sonja movie. I don't remember too much about it at all, to be honest. I hadn't seen it in such a long time, so I really don't have too much to say. I like the idea of a Red Sonja movie being made. I think she's very worthy of having her own movie made, or TV series or whatever, but obviously what the general masses think of it is another story. All right, so let's move on to the final news item of the week, at least at the time of this recording. Like I mentioned, I am recording this a little earlier than I usually do. Guillermo del Toro has signed a deal with Fox Searchlight that will also have him develop a genre label for the studio. So Guillermo del Toro, of course, coming off his Best Director Oscar and his Best Picture Oscar for The Shape of Water, and all that was thanks to Fox Searchlight, who took the chance on Del Toro and The Shape of Water. And it looks like the partnership is going to be a little bit bigger, because Del Toro has signed a deal with Fox Searchlight to launch a soon-to-be-named label focused on projects in the horror, sci-fi, and fantasy genres that Del Toro will, quote, curate for them, end quote. The director had this to say about the deal, saying, quote, "For the longest time, I've hoped to find an environment in which I can distribute, nurture, and produce new voices in smart, innovative genre films and channel my own. In Fox Searchlight, I have found a real home for live-action production, a partnership based on hard work, understanding of each other, and above all, faith. After the wonderful experience I had with Fox Searchlight on The Shape of Water, I am honored to have the opportunity to continue the relationship. I am more than grateful to Nancy, Steve, David, and Matthew for their trust and for joining me on this adventure," end quote. Obviously, I can assume that Nancy, Steve, David, and Matthew are people who run Fox Searchlight. So this is pretty cool. Del Toro has always kind of jumped around from studio to studio. Obviously the Hellboy movies, I believe, were done through Universal, so he's jumped around a lot from his career, and having him kind of finally settle down on a studio, and basically the studio giving him the reins of creating this new label for them. Obviously Fox Searchlight is an arm of 20th Century Fox, but Fox Searchlight does focus a little bit more on the independent movies, and having Fox Searchlight devote a label and basically have Guillermo del Toro be probably not the head of the label, but at least someone who will help them find, like you mentioned, voices and have him be able to develop these ideas for himself and for others, and release movies, I think is pretty cool. And the fact that they're going to focus on, horror, sci-fi, and fantasy, which is something that Del Toro thrives on. So that's really awesome and really cool. So that's really awesome. And of course, Del Toro, at the moment, he's not directing anything. He's taking all of 2018 off. He's going to be producing movies for other people. He's writing a book, or he's going to start writing a book with interviews of him with other filmmakers like George Miller and Michael Mann. So that's it. And before he was like, I'm going to take a break after the whole Shape of Water and Oscar press is done. He was going to produce and direct, and I believe co-write a remake of Fantastic Voyage, which James Cameron was going to help him produce. But that was before he was like, no, I'm taking a break. I'm done. I'm taking a year off. Leave me alone. So I don't know how that's going to work out. But that being said, it looks like the first film that would be released through this new deal with Del Toro and Fox Searchlight will be a movie called Antlers. It is a film that tells the story of an elementary school teacher who takes in a troubled student that harbors a mysterious family secret with deadly consequences. The film will be written by Nick Antosca. I think that's how you say his last name. He is one of the writers of the Sci-Fi Channel series Zero, or Channel Zero, and it will be directed by Scott Cooper, who of course has directed films like Out of the Furnace, Black Mass, and Hostiles. However, there is no release date or production date for that movie, so there is that. So obviously we can add Del Toro to the producer lineup of that movie, which sounds kind of interesting. So we'll see how that works out. And again, Del Toro having his own studio, or not again having at least part of his own studio, I would imagine, is kind of cool because maybe we can see him pull out some passion projects that he has. That we don't know of. I know one of them is, I think there was, when this news broke out, sorry, I just kicked something, I don't know if that mic picked it up, but anyway, when the news broke out of this story, and people were like, oh, he's going to be producing all these sci-fi, horror, fantasy movies, I think a lot of the reports that I was reading was like, maybe he'll finally be able to get his At the Mountains of Madness movie made, which I think would be really cool if he can do that. I don't know if Fox Searchlight would bust out the cash for that, but I think if they have a good working relationship and Del Toro can find a way to do At the Mountains of Madness movie for Fox Searchlight, I think that'd be really cool. Probably shouldn't hold our breaths for that one just yet, but we'll see how that works out. But we have Antlers to look forward to. That will probably be the first real test for the label. And so we'll see how that works out. But this is really cool. I've always mentioned that I'm a huge fan of Guillermo del Toro. I have liked pretty much every movie he's done to this point. So I'm all on board. It's kind of hard to be biased, but I'm a huge fan of del Toro. So good for him and good for Fox Searchlight, because this is a huge get for them as well. Alright, so like I mentioned, that is all the movie news items that have come out this week. It was a rather slow week this week, but again, I'm recording this a little early, so if anything drops after the podcast goes up and after it's all edited and everything, again, you can go to the Facebook page, which is facebook.com/moviepit. That's facebook.com/moviepit. There is a clickable link in the description/show notes area for you guys to go click on. Give me a like over there. It gives you pretty much an early preview of what we're going to talk about on the podcast. However, I go more into detail on the podcast than I do on the Facebook page. There's also the Twitter page for the podcast. It's at Movie Pit Podcast. That's at Movie Pit Podcast all together. The M, the P, and the P in podcast and pit and movie are all capitalized. So yeah, that's it. It's all the movie news items for you guys. Let's move on to this week's movie releases.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Alright, so this week's movies releases, we have quite a few this week. I was kind of surprised at how many movie releases are out this week, but yeah, so we always talk about, of course, the limited releases coming out this week. The first limited release we're going to talk about is Pandas. That's right, you heard me, Pandas. In the mountains of China, a researcher forms a bond with a panda who is about to experience nature for the first time. It is I believe it's one of the nature documentaries, or at least a documentary about pandas. Either way, if you like pandas, it's probably a documentary for you. So there's that. The next limited release is You Were Never Really Here, which is based off the book by Jonathan Ames and written and directed by Lynn Ramsey, who did We Need to Talk About Kevin. The movie follows a traumatized veteran unafraid of violence and tracks down missing girls for a living. When a job spins out of control, Joe, who was played by Joaquin Phoenix in the movie, has nightmares that overtake him as a conspiracy is uncovered, leading to what may be his death trip or his awakening. So Lynn Ramsey is one of those directors that everyone should probably look out for, and one of those directors that everyone really talks about. I have not seen We Need to Talk About Kevin. I've been meaning to watch that, but everyone that I know really likes the movie, so I can only imagine that this would be a movie that everyone's going to be really down to go watch. So these next two movies are considered wide releases. Wide releases are usually more than 1,000 theaters, and these movies will definitely be hitting more than 1,000 theaters. However, their theater count is relatively low compared to the wide releases this week, so I'm putting them in the limited release category. So the first one is Chappaquiddick. Ted Kennedy, played by Jason Clarke in the movie. Ted Kennedy's life and political career become derailed after he is involved in a fatal 1969 car accident that claims the life of young campaign strategist Mary Jo I'm going to mispronounce his last name, and I feel very bad for this. Kopichin, I think that's how you pronounce it. I could be very wrong about that. She's played by Kate Mara in the movie. The trailers are been okay. I did not know about this incident at all until I read about the movie, and I looked it up, and yeah, I don't know how I feel about the movie. The trailers have been a little odd for me for some reason. I can't really connect to the trailers too much. And that's a shame because I really like Jason Clarke. I like Kate Mara. Ed Helms is also in the movie. Clancy Brown, Jim Gaffigan, Olivia Thirlbilly, and I'm pretty sure I mispronounced her last name. And Bruce Stern is also in the movie. So it's a good cast. It seems like a good story. I mean, good in terms of drama wise, not a good story as in someone died and there was a political cover up. But yeah, I don't know. There's something about the trailers that don't really connect to me too well. I don't know if I'm going to go watch it, but again, it's got a great cast, so maybe if it plays in theaters long enough, maybe I'll catch it. But Chappaquiddick, there you go. And the next and final limited release we're going to talk about, is The Miracle Season. After a tragic death of star volleyball player Caroline Line Found, a team of dispirited high school girls band together under the guidance of their tough love coach in hopes of winning the state championship. I don't know why I'm talking with a lot of spaces within each word. But The Miracle Season. I've seen the trailer. I think the first time I saw the trailer was in front of Star Wars The Last Jedi. And I was a little confused because I was like, why are they showing this trailer in front of this movie? It doesn't make any sense. But I've seen a couple of the trailers now, and I can't really get into it. I feel like I've seen most of the movie in the trailers and the TV spots, but obviously there is a crowd for it. It's not targeted toward me, so I mean, if you want to go check that out, you can. I'm not saying it won't be good. It's just not targeted toward me, and it felt kind of odd that my first experience watching the trailer was in front of Star Wars: The Last Jedi, because it just wasn't a movie that was like, it's not owned by Disney either. I forgot what studio it was, but it's just I don't know. It's me. Because I'm weird like that. All right, so let's move on to the wide releases of the week. We only have two. The first one is Blockers, which is the comedy. Three parents, played by Leslie Mann, Ike Barinholtz, and John C. Tried to stop their daughters from having sex on prom night. When I saw the trailer for the first time, I was like, this can't be, wow, this is a real movie. And then John Cena's in it, and alright, okay, alright. And then the trailers kept coming out, and I was like, you know what, no, I'm all for this. Obviously, it seems like it's going to be a raunchy comedy, but the reviews so far have been pretty good for it. I think I've seen some mixed reviews, but most of them have been fairly positive. So there is that. And seeing John Cena in a role like this is one very different. You know, obviously it's not a role that you would expect John Cena to have. But people have been saying that he steals the show, and obviously from the trailers you can see that. So I am looking forward to this. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to kind of see how that plays out. But the other wide release this week, and the movie that I'm really looking forward toward, is A Quiet Place. It is written and directed by John Krasinski. He also stars in the movie with his real-life wife, Emily Blunt, in the movie. And it follows a family who lives an isolated existence in utter silence for the fear of an unknown threat that follows and attacks at any sound. This one I've been looking forward toward since pretty much the very beginning. I like the idea of Krasinski and Emily Blunt teaming up, but when I saw that trailer, I was completely sold on this movie. The concept is great, and the reviews so far have been amazing. Everyone really, really is digging this movie, and I'm just so happy to see that. It's again, I just really like the concept. You know, you can't make a sound at all, because if you do, you're going to die, and that concept alone is great, especially in a horror movie. Because, you know, you get the typical, it's like, oh, you know, don't make a sound, a killer's gonna find you, and he's gonna, you know, drag you out of the closet you're hiding in or whatever. But this is like, no, if you actually make a sound, you are pretty much going to die, because whatever monster is out there is gonna find you and it's gonna kill you. And I'm totally for that. It looks great. You know, everyone's been saying it's a good movie. John Krasinski apparently changed the design of the monsters at the last minute. So I don't know. I just saw the headline. I didn't actually read the interview. I just saw the headline of that. But yeah, man, I'm really excited for this one. I can't wait for it. I've been waiting for this movie for a while, and it's got John Krasinski and Emily Blunt. I mean, that's like everyone's favorite Hollywood couple, because they're all breaking up now apparently. But yeah, I mean, you got those two who are always great in anything they do. And this is John Krasinski's first horror movie. He's written and directed dramas and dramedies. This is his first horror movie, and the fact that he knocks it out of the park is amazing. So I'm totally looking forward to this. I can't wait to watch this, and I can't wait to be scared by it, because you know everyone's just going to be freaking out for this movie. So I'm looking forward to that. Alright, so that's it. Those are your releases for the week. Like I mentioned, your wide releases are A Quiet Place and Blockers. Your limited releases this week are The Miracle Season, Chappaquiddick, You Were Never Really Here, and Pandas. So that's it. So next week, give you guys a little sneak peek of that. We have an expansion release of a movie that came out last week. 2 weeks ago, something like that. I'm all mixed up because I missed 2 weeks now. But it's an expansion release nonetheless. There's an animated movie based on a real story, a drama based on a real event, a John Hamm drama, which we talked about earlier, another horror movie, and a movie based on a video game, which, if you were paying attention to the podcast, stars a certain someone that we talked about. So, yeah, there you go. And that's it, guys. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining me in the podcast this week. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I've been off for 2 weeks. If this podcast is a little rusty and, you know, cut around corners and half-assed, I apologize. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things since I came back from my personal family matter. So, yeah, that's all I got for you guys this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. Like I mentioned, it was kind of a slow week this week, but we filled it up with all the movie news items that I've missed for the last 2 weeks. And again, if anything drops, you are more than welcome to go to the Facebook page at facebook.com/moviepit. That's facebook.com/moviepit. Again, there is a clickable link in the description/show notes area. You can also follow, you can go like us over there. Again, if you like, it basically gives you an early preview of what we're going to talk about on the podcast. I just go more into detail here on the podcast than I do on the Facebook page. Also, if anything drops after the podcast goes up, that's where it goes. You can also follow us on Twitter. That's at MoviePit Podcast. That's at MoviePit Podcast. The Twitter page is going to be more active from here on forth. What trailers, opinions, reviews, recommendations, stuff like that. So it was supposed to happen this week, but I was still getting my bearings together on a lot of stuff, so there is that. Also, while you're down there in the description/show notes area, be sure to go check out all the trailer links. Again, I highly recommend you go watch the trailer for Upgrade. Both of them will be up there, the red band and the green band. So go check that out. And any other trailer that drops this week will also be down, or after the podcast goes up, or after I'm done recording, I should say, and editing, they'll be up there as well. While you're down there, you can go check out the WordPress account. That's WordPress.com, or movieswithchris.wordpress.com. I think that's how they do their URLs. I always forget. But there's a link down there for that. That's where I do my spoiler-free written reviews. I haven't done one in a while. Obviously, I was going to do one for Ready Player One. Just couldn't find the time to actually write one. So I will probably maybe do a review for A Quiet Place this weekend. I'm not positive about that, but so the written reviews will be coming back fairly shortly and very soon over on my WordPress account, where again I do spoiler-free written reviews. There's a link down there as well. So and there's links down there to everything else. My personal Twitter and Instagram if you want to go check that out. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you guys. You guys know how to do that, so go check all that stuff out. And that's it. That's all I got for you guys. I'm gonna stop rambling on, because I hate myself when I do that, and I hate myself listening to it when I edit the podcast, and I'm sure you hate listening to me rambling on. So that's it. I'm done. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Make sure to come back. If you're listening to this, wherever you're listening to this, YouTube, SoundCloud, or iTunes, because we are on iTunes, I would appreciate if you leave me a review on iTunes and a rating. If you do that, I will shout you guys out here on the podcast when it pops up on that. But yeah. And if you leave anything on SoundCloud and YouTube, I'll probably shout you out here too. So there you go. All right, that's it. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Hopefully your week has been great. And if it hasn't, hopefully your weekend is great or better. So go out there, have some fun, be careful, be safe. And as always, go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!